How did humans survive the Ice Age? In a completely different world, a world covered by massive ice sheets and where the air was biting and resources scarce, that was the Ice Ages, an era of extreme cold and eerie silence where survival was a daily challenge. The world was not as we know it today with its noise and speed, but rather a world wrapped in infinite white stillness where snow swallows every sound and the winds whisper tales of old. As for you, before we begin this deep and calm journey, leave your mark on our channel by hitting the subscribe and like buttons so you can easily find our content next time. And now, take a deep breath, close your eyes, lie down, and let sleep creep in. How did the human of that time, with little preparation and limited capabilities, manage to withstand the cruelty of nature in its most extreme forms? What are the skills he developed? And how did he adapt to an environment that threatened him with death by starvation and cold at every moment? It was not easy, and there was no luxury or external support. Merely searching for food or shelter was a struggle for survival. Days passed very slowly, and nights stretched as if they were an unending aeon. We will dive deep into that distant era. We will explore the survival strategies followed by man, from innovative hunting methods in the frozen prairies to building shelter that protects him from the cruelty of the elements and how harsh conditions shape their minds and bodies. We will imagine together the sound of heavy footsteps on crunchy snow and their breaths turning into clouds of steam in the frozen air. The harsh environment is the first challenge for the human of that era. Thousands of years ago, during the periods of the Ice Ages, large parts of our planet were covered with massive ice sheets extending for hundreds of miles and reaching kilometers in thickness. These periods were not just a long, cold winter, but were a radical shift in climate and environment, imposing unprecedented challenges on all living beings, including humans. Temperatures were incredibly low. Winter was long and harsh, and summer short and weak, barely melting the surface layers of snow. Winds were fierce, carrying with them icy snow pellets that whip the face and penetrate any protection. The sky was often gray, reflecting the coldness of the earth. Let us reflect a little on the nature of this white enemy. The ice itself, snow in the Ice Age, was not just a soft white cover as we see it today. It was a living and massive geological entity. The ice sheets that covered half the globe were moving. Yes, the ice moves. It creeps very slowly, unnoticed by the naked eye. But it grinds the rocks beneath it and changes the course of rivers and carves deep valleys. On very quiet nights, ancient man could hear the groan of the ice, a deep sound, low frequency, resembling the sound of muffled thunder coming from the belly of the earth. In this harsh environment, plant and animal life forms changed. The dense forests we know today were rare and were replaced by cold tundra plains where mosses and lichens and some small shrubs grow. This change in vegetation directly affected the types of animals available for hunting. Massive animals that adapted to these conditions were the main source of food and clothing for humans. The woolly mammoth, woolly rhinoceros, ibex, and massive bison were roaming these frozen plains. Hunting these giant creatures required superior courage and collective organization and deep knowledge of the behavior of these animals. Snow took on countless forms. There is the soft powder snow scattered by the wind like dust, and there is the hard and transparent glassy ice that covers lakes, and through which swimming fish can be seen slowly in the dark depths. And there is the old compressed snow whose color turned dark blue over thousands of years. Man had to learn to read these types, to know where to place his foot, and which snow is safe to walk on, and which snow might hide deadly cracks beneath it. The existence of liquid water was not easy, as most water was frozen in rivers and lakes or trapped in ice sheets. Obtaining drinking water required melting snow or searching for springs that had not yet frozen. Every aspect of life required double effort merely to survive. In this frozen world that shows no mercy, man was just a small part of the natural fabric. He had to adapt or face extinction. This is the first chapter of the tale of human resilience in the face of deadly snow silence. Let us imagine now a moment from those distant days, a moment where isolation is embodied amidst the whiteness of snow. Imagine you are standing alone in an endless open plain. The sky above you is not blue, but white, leaning towards gray, heavy and low. The air around you is not just a void, but is a cold physical entity, entering your lungs like icy liquid. And you are a hunter, straying from your group by 2 miles. The silence here is not just an absence of sound, but is a silence with weight pressing on your ears. The only sound you hear is the sound of your blood flowing in your veins and the sound of your cautious steps on the frozen snow. A sound that makes your skin shiver. The snow under your thick boot is not soft, but is a hard and crunchy crust. You stop for a moment to explore the horizon with your eyes, your eyelashes covered with a thin layer of white frost, and your breath comes out as dense clouds of steam fading slowly in front of your face. You do not feel the cold seeping into your body because your clothes made of 2 layers of bear fur protect you like a fortress. But you feel the sting of the air on your exposed cheeks, a sting reminding you that you are alive. You stand motionless, exactly like a statue of ice, waiting, and time passes slowly like a turtle. There is no rush, only you, and the wind, and the quiet pulse of the frozen earth beneath your feet. Shelter is the fortress against extinction. Searching for food was not the only challenge for humans. Securing suitable shelter was a paramount necessity for survival. For sleeping in the open meant almost certain death due to freezing. So our ancestors developed smart strategies to exploit available resources to build shelters, protecting them from the harshness of weather. Caves were the natural and least effortless shelter. Caves provided immediate protection from wind and snow, and their rocky walls retained some relative warmth. So, searching for suitable caves was a top priority for mobile human groups. Inside these caves, man lit fire to maintain warmth and cook food and provide lighting in the pitch darkness. But caves were not available everywhere. In vast plains devoid of rock formations, man was forced to build his own shelter. Here the skill of hunting emerged as a key to survival, not only for food but for raw building materials. For the woolly mammoth, for example, did not provide meat and fat only, but its massive bones were used as structures for dwellings. These bone dwellings were built by planting large mammoth bones in the ground to form a frame, then covered with thick animal skins. These skins provided excellent insulation against cold and wind, and sometimes were weighted with stones or their edges buried in the ground to increase stability against snowstorms. Imagine the muscular effort required to lift a giant mammoth jawbone and fix it in the frozen ground, and the sound of the wind hitting the taut skins from the outside resembled the sound of distant drums, while inside a warm relative calm prevails. These shelters were not just places to sleep, but were centers for social life. Inside them, families gathered, made their tools, treated animal skins, and exchanged stories and knowledge. The warmth provided by fire in these shelters was the axis of existence, a symbol of survival in the face of deadly cold. Building these complex shelters reflects the intelligence of ancient man and his ability to adapt to the environment. It is proof of man's ingenuity in transforming the most dangerous resources into a means of protection to secure a safe haven in a world where cold was the greatest threat. Fire is the beating heart of life. In the Ice Age, fire was more than just a means for heating. It was a fundamental pillar for human existence and survival. In a world wrapped in permafrost, The ability to light a fire and maintain it was the difference between life and death, between resilience and silent extinction. Man learned early on how to control fire and use it skillfully. Lighting a fire required skill and patience. Our ancestors used simple tools like flint and marcasite to create sparks, or friction techniques between two pieces of wood to produce enough heat to ignite dry materials quickly. Imagine the hands cracked from cold holding the flint stone to make it rub against another stone, and the sound of repetitive stone clicking waiting for that small spark. The role of fire was not limited to warmth, but was a foundation for cooking food, making meat easier to digest and less prone to disease. Cooking food also allowed storing surplus for longer periods, which is vital in a time of scarce resources. Fire enabled man to treat animal skins to become more flexible and suitable for making clothes and covers, providing an additional layer of protection against cold. In addition to that, fire was an effective deterrent to predators. At night, firelight scared wolves and bears and saber-toothed tigers, keeping them away from the shelter, ensuring a measure of safety while sleeping. It also brought people together, fostering social bonds and organization within the group. Mastering the use of fire is one of the most important human achievements that allowed the Ice Age human to survive. Fire was the beating heart for every human group, lighting their way and warming their bodies and protecting their souls in the face of the challenges of the world of snow and silence. Tools are an extension of man's hand and intelligence. The mere existence of shelter and fire was not enough to ensure human survival in the Ice Age. The ability to make tools was what distinguished him from other creatures and gave him the upper hand in his struggle against an unforgiving environment. These tools, crafted with skill and silence, were the key to obtaining food and a means of protection and a witness to the development of human thought. Stone tools were the foundation. Our ancestors used complex techniques to split flint and other stones to make sharp spearheads, knives, and scrapers. These tools were not just stones split randomly, but were studied designs reflecting deep understanding of material properties and how to exploit them. These sharp blades were essential for cutting meat of massive animals and processing their skins, and even shaping bones and wood. Let us imagine the most frequent sound in the lives of these humans, the sound of manual industries. Sitting for long hours to make a single spearhead required a kind of forced patience. The process begins with choosing the suitable stone. Then the rhythm begins, a precise blow using a hammer of antler, after which small fragments start flying and glinting in the air before falling to the ground. The process requires a monotonous and hypnotic repetition. A blow, then checking the edge, then wiping dust, then another blow. This rhythm filled the long leisure hours during storms. With the development of skills, man began using other materials available in his glacial environment, bones and ivory, which were remains of hunting massive animals, turned into versatile tools, from which fine sewing needles were made, which were essential for sewing skins and making warm and tight clothes against cold. Also better spearheads and hooks for fishing in rivers or lakes that did not freeze completely were made from them. Wood, despite its scarcity in some glacial regions, was also used to make handles for tools or frames for shelters. The techniques used in processing these materials were simple but effective, and show man's ability to innovate under pressure. These tools were not just to meet basic needs. They enabled man to expand his hunting capabilities. Inventing spears with stone or bone heads allowed them to target larger and more dangerous prey from a safe distance. Using hooks and primitive nets allowed them to diversify their food sources to include fish, which is vital in certain seasons. Big game hunting was a process not limited to obtaining meat only, for every part of the animal was utilized fully. Skins for clothes and shelter, bones for tools and structures, fats for fuel and lighting, and even sinews for binding and sewing. These practices reflect an economy built on maximum efficiency in using resources in an environment that tolerated no waste. Man's ability to hunt these giant creatures shows his cognitive and social development. He was no longer just a creature relying on gathering and scavenging, but became a skilled hunter capable of controlling his environment, ensuring his survival and resilience in the silence of the Ice Age. Clothing is the second shield of protection. In an environment where temperatures dropped constantly below freezing, shelter and fire alone were not enough for protection. Effective clothing was a paramount necessity, not a luxury to ensure human survival in the Ice Age. Our ancestors mastered the art of transforming massive animal skins into silent shields against deadly frost. Ice Age man's clothes were not simple like skins wrapped around the body. They were made with care and superior skill, using the fine bone needles we mentioned earlier. These needles enabled them to sew skins together tightly and make multi-layered clothes, providing excellent thermal insulation. The basic raw materials were the skins of animals they hunted: skins of woolly mammoth, bears, ibex, and wolves. These skins were thick and with dense fur, providing excellent natural protection against cold. But merely skinning the hide was not enough. It had to be treated in primitive but effective ways to make it soft and water and damage resistant. The treatment process included scraping remaining meat and fat from the skin, then rubbing it with animal fats or even chewing it sometimes to make it soft. Materials like animal brain or some plants were also used for primitive tanning process. After that, the skin was dried in the air or over fire, then smoked to increase its resistance to mold. These complex processes required a long time and great effort, and show the extent of their appreciation for survival tools and clothes. These clothes were made to suit harsh conditions. They were sewn to be tightly sealed at wrists and ankles and neck to prevent cold leakage. Included hats covering head and ears, and thick gloves to protect hands, and warm insulated boots to protect feet from freezing. Often these clothes were made of 2 layers or more of skins and fur, with fur placed inside for more warmth. The ability to make these advanced clothes was one of the main reasons behind human success in surviving the Ice Age. These clothes were like a second protective skin, enabling them to endure the harshness of winter and move in the frozen environment searching for food and ensuring the continuity of offspring in the face of deadly cold silence. Food and storage and the battle of calories inside their bodies. Securing food was not easy for the Ice Age human. They had to develop advanced skills in foraging and storing to ensure survival during long periods of scarcity and biting cold. Hunting massive animals provided large quantities of meat, but this food had to be consumed or stored quickly before it spoiled. In the absence of modern refrigeration techniques, our ancestors resorted to primitive but effective ways to preserve food. Natural freezing was one of these ways. Burying meat in snow or in frozen soil preserved it for relatively long periods. They also practiced drying meat and smoking it. After cutting meat into thin strips, it was dried in cold, dry air or smoked over fire inside the shelter. These processes were removing moisture from meat, making it light in weight and easy to carry, making it ideal for mobile groups, and rows of hanging meat dried slowly, shrinking and hardening to become a strategic stock. Food was not limited to meat only. Despite the scarcity of plants in the tundra environment, Ice Age man supplemented his diet by searching for tubers and edible roots growing underground, and some wild berries in warmer seasons. Even if these sources were less abundant, they also fished in unfrozen rivers and lakes using hooks or primitive nets. Every part of the hunted animal was utilized. Nothing was wasted. Bones were broken to extract bone marrow rich in fat and energy, which is a vital source of calories in a cold environment requiring immense energy to maintain body heat. Animal fats were also used as fuel for lighting and heating, in addition to being a rich source of energy when consumed. The sound of cracking bones and sucking warm marrow was part of daily food rituals. Food storage was done carefully inside the shelter or in natural caches in caves or under snow. These practices reflect man's foresight and ability to plan for the future, not just for today, but for the coming long winter. The art of foraging and storing was one of the most important reasons for our ancestors' survival, and it is a silent achievement telling the story of their ability to adapt in the face of scarce conditions. Community and communication were the strength of these groups. Human survival in the Ice Age did not depend only on individual skills, but on his superior ability for social organization and working within cohesive groups. In an unforgiving environment, the strength of the group was the last fortress against extinction and the silent voice resounding with survival. Human groups in that period were relatively small, consisting of several related families, numbering usually between 20 to 50 people. This size was ideal for movement and searching for resources and ensuring security. Isolation meant death. Every individual in the group had a specific and important role, whether in hunting or gathering food or preparing clothes or caring for children and the elderly. Division of labor was essential. Men hunters focused on tracking and hunting large animals, while women and children were often responsible for gathering edible plants and small fish, and processing skins and meat, and making tools and clothes. This cooperation ensured every individual's role within the system to ensure everyone's survival. The sound of faint group singing or humming during routine work filled the void. Exchanging knowledge and experiences was also vital. Techniques for making tools and hunting methods and places of resource availability were all knowledge passed orally from generation to generation. The elderly, despite their physical weakness, represented a living repository of wisdom and experience, offering advice and guidance, ensuring the group's continuity in facing external dangers. Whether predators or other human groups, unity was the guarantee. Joint protection of shelter and collective defense of resources were key strategies. There was a deep sense of belonging and solidarity, for individual survival was contingent on the survival of the group as a whole. These groups did not live in total isolation. There were networks of exchange and communication between different groups, and perhaps this was done via seasonal meetings to exchange goods or knowledge or even partners. These silent interactions increased the resilience of these societies and their ability to adapt. The strength of social organization and cooperation and division of labor were decisive factors in enabling man to survive in the Ice Age. The group was the basic building block of life, giving the individual warmth and security and support in a cold and silent world, requiring the utmost degrees of cohesion to survive. Art and spirituality are the imprint of humanity for that era. Amidst all the harsh challenges of survival, Ice Age man was not just a creature seeking material security. He possessed a creative spirit manifested in silent arts painted on dark cave walls, leaving behind a visual legacy telling stories about his life and beliefs and relationship with his world. Cave paintings are the most prominent witness to this art. In caves like Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain, our ancestors depicted animals that were an integral part of their lives: mammoths, bison, ibex, and horses. These drawings were often incredibly realistic, showing precise details and vibrant movement, indicating their power of observation. Imagine the ancient artist crawling in narrow passages holding a torch, to stand before a cold rock wall and start painting. These drawings were not just decorative paintings. It was believed they had spiritual or magical functions, perhaps used in hunting rituals to bring luck or ensure the success of the chase, or perhaps were a means to train new generations to recognize animals and their behaviors. These silent paintings were like visual libraries and history books for those societies. Tools used by ancient artists were simple but effective. They used colors extracted from minerals like red and yellow ochre and iron oxides and charcoal. These materials were mixed with animal fats or water or plant juices to create pigments, applied to walls using fingers or feathers, or even chewing colors and spitting them on the surface. In addition to animal drawings, drawings of human hands also appear in some caves, often printed or drawn with inks. These silent prints indicate human presence and perhaps had personal or spiritual connotations, as if they are saying, "We were here." Art was not limited to walls. Man also made small artifacts from minerals, bones, and ivory and soft rocks. These small sculptures embodied animals or human figures, like the famous Venus figurines believed to be symbols of fertility. These portable artworks were part of their daily life and show their aesthetic sense. Art in the Ice Age was more than just a hobby. It was an integral part of human survival and a means to express his fear and hope in a harsh world. These silent whispers on cave walls tell us the story of a human spirit that created even in the darkest conditions, leaving a cultural legacy spanning thousands of years, a never-ending journey. Despite the lack of direct evidence of spoken language in that distant era, the complex behaviors performed by our ancestors strongly suggest the existence of a developed form of communication. Collective hunting of mammoths requires high coordination and prior planning, and quick commands and directions during the chase. These actions cannot be done effectively without a language allowing the transfer of complex ideas. Language was also necessary to transfer knowledge and experience across generations. How do youth learn the art of making complex stone tools? How do they acquire precise knowledge of animal behaviors and their migration places? And how do they identify edible and poisonous plants? All this requires oral teaching where stories and instructions are passed from parents and grandparents. Perhaps language was not just words. Ancient man also used nonverbal communication effectively. Gestures and body language and even complex sounds mimicking animal sounds could have played a crucial role in coordination and expressing emotions. Art in caves itself can be seen as a form of communication. These drawings were not just decorations but carried messages and connotations for the community, perhaps about successful hunting or spirituality or even important events. They were like a silent visual language recording part of their history. In addition to that, language played a role in social cohesion. Storytelling around the fire at night, exchanging jokes, or even just daily talk strengthens bonds between group members and makes them feel belonging and security in a world trying to isolate them. Sessions of night entertainment around the fire were the first school where words flowed with the smoke of burning wood. That the evolution of language in its spoken and unspoken forms was one of the greatest evolutionary leaps that enabled man to survive. Language was the invisible fabric that bound group members together and allowed them to learn from the past and plan for the future and face the challenges of the Ice Age with a silent collective voice. The dynamic nature of the Ice Age forced them to move and migrate for vast distances in search of resources and survival. These journeys undertaken in the silence of frozen terrain were an integral part of human strategy for survival. Major animal migrations were the main driver for these human movements. The mammoth herd or ibex, representing a vital source of food and raw materials, moved in search of seasonal pastures. Hunters in turn followed these herds, forcing them to traverse icy plains and cross frozen rivers and climb snow-covered hills. These journeys were not random. Ancient man possessed deep knowledge of terrain and places of water availability and natural shelters. This knowledge, passed orally across generations, acted as silent maps guiding them in their long journeys. They knew when and where they could find food and when they must move before resources dried up or cold intensified. These migrations were also a means to discover new lands and expand the range of human settlement. Through these continuous movements, man spread gradually across continents until he reached areas never trodden by human foot before. This slow and silent spread is what allowed humanity to survive and diversify, even when their numbers were small. Let us imagine if we were part of this great march. The caravan moves at night to be guided by stars. The earth beneath you is a frozen ocean of white hills. You walk and walk and walk. The movement becomes mechanical and monotonous. The sound of hundreds of feet hitting the ground creates a low rhythm, as if it is the sound of the earth pulsating that there is life upon it. On your back, you carry everything you own. The air is cold and very pure. Washing your thoughts, you look at the sky, finding it above you, a black velvet dome studded with billions of sparkling diamonds. Continuous walking puts you in a state resembling delicious trance. You walk in silence, surrounded by the breaths of your companions, walking as one body in a quiet and slow journey across time and space towards a new horizon. These journeys required high physical endurance as well as good organization of the group. Tools and skins and stored food had to be carried, and children and the elderly protected in harsh conditions. It is a testament to human resilience and ability to adapt to changing conditions. Many archaeological discoveries like stone tool paths or temporary shelter remains point to these continuous movements. They tell the story of human groups moving slowly and cautiously step by step to ensure their survival in a world forcing them to constantly search for a safe home and a permanent resource. The ability to migrate and adapt to new environments was the cornerstone of human survival from the Ice Age. These silent journeys across frozen continents were what ensured the continuity of our species and laid the foundation for its spread all over the world. Human survival in the Ice Age did not depend only on his intelligence and cultural skills, but also on silent biological adaptations that occurred in his body over thousands of years. These transformations that occurred to humans very slowly enabled them to withstand the harsh conditions of cold and hunger better. One of the most prominent of these adaptations related to human metabolism. For in a very cold environment, the body needs immense energy to maintain its internal heat. Our ancestors might have developed better ability to store fat and use it as an energy source when needed, providing them with internal insulation against cold and a stock of energy in periods of food scarcity. Also, body shape might have witnessed some adaptations. People living in very cold environments often have bodies that are stockier and with shorter limbs compared to those living in hot regions. This shape helps reduce surface area exposed to cold relative to body volume, reducing heat loss and maintaining warmth of vital organs. Adaptations were not limited to external appearance, for the body's ability to regulate internal temperature might have improved as well. This includes mechanisms like involuntary shivering to produce heat or diverting blood flow away from limbs to maintain warmth of the torso and vital organs. These processes were done involuntarily and contribute to staying alive. Perhaps there were also changes in skin and hair color, as continuous exposure to cold might affect pigmentation. However, evidence for these biological adaptations in that distant era is often indirect and relies on studying skeletal remains and analyzing genes of current populations descending from those cold regions. These biological adaptations are not fast or clear, like making a tool or building a shelter, but are silent and deep transformations occurring over long generations. They show how the human body itself was part of the survival strategy, evolving and adapting slowly to become more resilient in the face of the harshest environmental conditions, ensuring our species' continuity across the frozen ice ages. The white storm. And one of the worst accidents that used to happen is waking up to find that the sky, which was gray, turned suddenly into complete white. It is the great snowstorm, known as the whiteout, where the world disappears in a white vortex. In these moments there is no room for movement. The only solution is total stillness. They took shelter inside the ice shelter, layers of skins above them shaking violently under wind blows. But they hold. Snow piles up over the shelter, becoming an additional insulator, increasing warmth inside. The storm might last for days, 3 days or 4, never going out in it. The outside world disappeared. Time stopped. You are in a warm and semi-dark cocoon. The only activity is sleep and repairing clothes quietly and telling stories in a whispering voice. Outside death dances, while inside life is preserved but postponed. This is the essence of survival. The ability to wait until nature's anger calms down. The ice ages did not last forever, for after thousands of years of biting cold and constant struggle, global climates began to change slowly, unnoticed by the human of that time. Massive ice sheets began to recede gradually, and global temperatures rose in a silent but profound shift, paving the way for a new era on the planet. This climate change, which took thousands of years, had immense effects on the environment and life. Ice plains began melting, leading to rising sea levels and the formation of new rivers and lakes. Vegetation changed again with the spread of forests and shrubs that were unable to grow at the peak of the Ice Age. Water droplets falling from the edges of melting ice were the first notes of this change. With the changing environment, animal species changed. Massive creatures that were dominant in the Ice Age, like the woolly mammoth and woolly rhinoceros, began to decrease in numbers gradually, and some species disappeared completely. Perhaps that was due to changes in their food sources or due to increasing human hunting pressure. This shift was not easy for man, as adapting to a new environment and the disappearance of massive prey, they relied on imposed new challenges on them. Man was forced to develop new hunting strategies focusing on smaller and more agile animals, or on searching for new plant food sources. Human groups began to settle more with the emergence of lifestyles based on hunting and gathering in specific areas instead of continuous migration. This relative stability paved the way for the emergence of the first agricultural societies that would change the face of human civilization forever. The Ice Ages bid farewell to our planet in silence, leaving behind a great legacy of human resilience. It is a testament to man's ability to adapt and innovate in the face of the most extreme conditions. The story of our ancestors' survival from the Ice Age is not just a chapter in history books, but is a constant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and its ability to survive and thrive even in the darkest conditions. And every time we feel the cold of winter, the echo of those distant days resonates, reminding us that we are the children of the survivors of the ice.